When you look in the mirror, who do you really see? Behind the reflection, there are layers of who you are, your essence, your masks, and even parts you might prefer to avoid. Carl Jung, one of the greatest names in analytical psychology, called this mask the persona, the role we play to the world. But what happens when we face what lies beyond it? Are we prepared to face our shadow, the hidden side that we hide even from ourselves? According to Jung, the persona is deeply linked to the fact that we all play different roles in our lives. Between the ego and society, the ego is the center of our consciousness, the basis of our identity throughout life. The persona, on the other hand, is the mask we create to hide parts of our true nature and adapt to social expectations. Imagine how you act at a job interview: upright posture, formal words, calculated answers. Now compare that with how you act with your best friends at a barbecue. These differences show how we use personas to adapt to different contexts. Jung believed that the persona is essential for socialization. We all adjust our masks according to the context, at work, at home, with friends, to meet the demands of each situation. It is crucial for defining our role in society and how we interact with others. The persona serves to hide our vulnerabilities and protect our weaknesses. From an early age, we learn to wear these masks, molding ourselves to the expectations of parents, teachers, and friends. We quickly understand what is accepted and brings us approval, and what is rejected and can lead to punishment. Jung identified two fundamental stages in the development of the persona. The first is the identification stage, where the persona can be healthy, as long as the person is aware that they are not, in fact, what they appear to be. However, when identification with the persona becomes excessive, there is a risk of alienation from the true self, the self, which Jung defines as the unifying center of the psyche and the totality of who we really are, encompassing both the conscious and the unconscious. This concern is well expressed by Jung in Ion, Studies on the Symbolism of the Self. The persona is what someone is not, but what he and others believe him to be. This is where the second stage comes in, disintegration. When the persona breaks down, whether by choice or by external circumstances, it can cause chaos and disorientation. Have you ever heard of someone who devoted years to a job, but when they were fired, completely lost direction in life? This happens because they were so identified with their professional role that without it they were left without a basis for sustaining their identity. In extreme cases, this rupture can lead to serious consequences, such as dissociative identity disorder, where the person develops multiple distinct personalities, each with their own worldview. This phenomenon is usually associated with deep trauma. When the persona disintegrates, Jung points to three possible outcomes. Negative restoration. The person tries to return to the previous state, ignoring the changes and pretending that nothing has happened. Absence of persona. This occurs when the person completely loses the ability to adapt to social demands, which can lead to isolation. Conscious restoration. The ideal path in which the person rebuilds a persona that not only adapts to the world, but also reflects their true self. This last stage is considered by Jung to be the goal of a balanced psyche, to live authentically without giving up social interaction. The dangers of hiding who we really are go beyond alienation from the self. They culminate in the emergence of what Jung called the shadow. The shadow represents the repressed aspects of our personality, what doesn't fit the persona and is therefore excluded from consciousness. We often repress parts of ourselves that we find unacceptable. Think of someone who has been taught since childhood that feeling angry is a bad thing. This person may end up hiding their anger even from themselves, but on a chaotic traffic day, they explode and even assault a driver. This is the shadow manifesting in an uncontrolled way. The shadow encompasses everything we hide because we consider it undesirable or shameful, the dark side of our personality, which often emerges uncontrollably in moments of stress or emotional outbursts. A crucial point highlighted by Jung is that the more rigid and perfectionist our persona, the bigger and more dangerous the shadow we create. Imagine a teacher who always maintains a posture of authority and perfection in front of the students. He represses his vulnerability and avoids showing emotions such as sadness or insecurity. One day, this pressure leads to an emotional breakdown at home, showing the weight of maintaining this mask for so long. When we strive to build an idealized image, morally superior, impeccable, or pure, We end up suppressing impulses, desires, and emotions that don't fit this ideal. These elements, pushed into the unconscious, can generate intense internal conflict, leading to significant psychological imbalances. Jung describes this phenomenon clearly in the archetypes and the collective unconscious. The shadow is a living part of the personality and wants to be heard and recognized. This means that ignoring the shadow doesn't make it disappear. On the contrary, it grows stronger, waiting for the moment to manifest itself, often in destructive or unexpected ways. For Jung, dealing with the shadow is a lifelong task. This process of self-knowledge allows us to recover positive aspects of our psyche that were dormant and makes us more honest about who we really are, both in virtues and flaws. Although the shadow is often associated with something negative, it only becomes dangerous when it is ignored or misunderstood. The persona, on the other hand, by playing its role of social adaptation, often prevents us from accomplishing the most important task in life, according to Jung, the process of individuation. This process is the path to becoming our most authentic and complete version. Think of a teenager who started playing the guitar because he thought his friends would admire him. Over time, he realizes that he loves music, and that playing the guitar is something he does for himself, not for others. Individuation brings us closer to our true selves, bringing to consciousness contents that were hidden in the unconscious. This material can be accessed through dreams, deep reflection, and practices such as active imagination. But it is essential to understand that individuation is not something that can be achieved by conscious willpower alone. In the Jungian sense, the I is the totality of the personality, much larger than the ego. The aim of individuation is to integrate all aspects of the psyche, conscious and unconscious, to form a complete whole. However, the persona can block this process. We cannot achieve individuation as long as we are stuck in the roles we pretend to play. Our beliefs about who we are also function as a subtle and powerful form of persona, perhaps the biggest obstacle to true individuation. One can admit many things about oneself, but there is always that silent, unshakable conviction. That's who I am. Period. This belief acts as a barrier that prevents any real attempt to get to know oneself deeply, leaving important aspects of the true self in the shadows. An example that illustrates this discussion well is the concept of bad faith, developed by the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, which can be compared to Jung's concept of persona. Sartre describes the attitude of a waiter in a cafe. His movements are too fast, his gestures exaggerated, and he seems to be acting out a role. For Sartre, this waiter is deceiving himself, confusing his social role with his true human identity. The waiter's persona has become indistinguishable from his existence. If, one day, he loses interest in his job or is fired, his persona collapses, leaving him face to face with the existential void, the I that he never developed. In Jung's view, this situation reflects a greater risk. Without a solid basis in reality and the true self, we run the risk of being dominated by the primordial images of the collective unconscious. By relying too much on the persona, we become vulnerable to the power of archetypes, which can absorb our sense of self. Jung argues that the goal of individuation is to strip the I of the artificial layers of the persona while learning to escape the overwhelming influence of archetypes. It is a delicate balance between freeing oneself from the superficiality of the social role and avoiding being swallowed up by the deep forces of the collective unconscious, allowing the true self to emerge fully and authentically. Archetypes, or primordial images, are universal patterns of behavior and experiences that we share on some level. To understand this, it is essential to explore the psychic model proposed by Jung. The I is divided into the conscious and the unconscious, the latter consisting of two main parts. The personal unconscious is like an archive of our repressed or forgotten experiences. The collective unconscious is different. It holds universal archetypes, patterns that shape the way we all see and react to the world. The persona, although it belongs to the conscious and acts as a mediator between the ego and society, also has a connection with the collective unconscious, and is sometimes called the social archetype or the archetype of conformity. Because it arises from a collective dimension, we often fall into the illusion that the persona is something purely individual. However, as the term itself suggests, the persona is only a superficial layer, a mask that reflects the expectations and values of the collective psyche. By analyzing it, We unmask this illusion and realize that much of what we believe to be unique and personal is actually part of something larger and impersonal. A similar reflection is made by C.S. Lewis in Letters from a Devil to His Apprentice. In the book, Through the Voice of Screwtape, the Demon Mentor, Lewis explores the danger of self-deception that occurs when we identify completely with a role or public image. He observes how small lies and omissions can, over time, create a profound disconnect between who we really are and what we appear to be. The best way to keep a soul away from God is to make it gradually believe that the mask it wears is its true face. This idea reinforces Jung's view that identifying exclusively with the persona distances us from authenticity and individuation, perpetuating the disconnection between the true self and external demands. This kind of disconnection can generate a deep internal emptiness as the person moves away from their true emotions, needs, and desires, replacing them with behaviors shaped by external expectations. In the modern world, social networks have amplified the creation of personas. We now have the chance to meticulously shape how we want to be seen. Incredible trips, impeccable meals, perfect smiles. But what doesn't show in the photos? Often fatigue, insecurities, and problems that don't match the idealized image. This constant pressure to maintain a perfect appearance not only disconnects people from who they really are, but also creates a cycle of comparison with the personas of others, increasing feelings of anxiety and emptiness. The further we distance ourselves from our true selves, the harder it is to recognize and integrate our shadow, that repressed part that reminds us that we are human. This pressure to maintain a perfect image often results in emotional problems such as anxiety, depression, and a feeling of alienation. The further we move away from our true selves, the more disconnected and empty we feel. Jung warned about the dangers of living only for the persona in memories, dreams, and reflections. Nothing is more pathetic than he who lives only for his persona, without ever coming to know the self. For Jung, living exclusively through the persona is a limited and unsatisfying existence. Genuine happiness and personal fulfillment are only possible when we dare to go beyond the mask and face the deeper and often uncomfortable aspects of who we are. The persona can be seen as a social contract, a negotiation between the individual and society about how we should appear. Although it is an important tool for social interaction, we cannot depend on it to develop our true individuality. This development requires a deeper connection with the collective unconscious and with the parts of ourselves that we repress or ignore. Confronting our persona and shadow is not a simple task, but it is essential for living authentically. This journey is not about abandoning the masks we wear, but learning to wear them wisely, without losing sight of who we really are. Jung teaches us that the first step towards individuation is awareness, recognizing the roles we play and questioning the extent to which they reflect or hide our essence. In doing so, we begin a powerful transformation, integrating all parts of our psyche. Remember, true personal fulfillment begins when we dare to look beyond the reflection in the mirror and face, without fear, the complex and fascinating totality of who we are. Did you like the content? Like the video and subscribe for more reflections on psychology and self-knowledge?